And here we have our field tomatoes planted in rows. I planted 2 rows. There's approximately 50 to 60 plants total in this row. Planted them in pairs. When I planted them, I dug a trench this way, laid the root balls down facing each other, and created a watering ring around them in the soil that way. So when you come along, all you have to do is put water in the middle of this hole, and both of these plants get watered at the same time. Now, this is mulched as well, so if we get enough rain this year, we really shouldn't have to water these. I've gone entire seasons without watering any tomatoes out in the garden. We'll see what this year brings. Now they do look a little bit rough because when they got transplanted a couple days later, we got hit with extremely high winds and cold weather. So these bottom leaves, you can see they just got tortured. So at that time, I put in this little mini windbreak for them just to help them get a better start. That was in late May, which is pretty early for where I live to be putting tomatoes out in the field. And they are doing quite well. You can see the new growth is definitely sucking up all the nutrients that I gave these guys, and they're now going to flower. I set up a very basic trellis system. I just had some cedar pallets kicking around from previous bark mulch purchases. So that's what these stands are made out of. And I used an old pallet, created a triangulated system here, so I only had to dig a couple holes, and this allows me to tighten up this top wire. So as these start to grow, we will hang string from the top of this wire for those tomatoes to climb up. And I'll show you how I do that throughout the season, but it's a very simple process. I don't use any complicated clips or anything like that. I basically just use jute, which has quite a bit of grip on the string. It's not a really slippery surface. And as the tomato's growing, I just wind my tomato vines up the string. And because our growing season is so short here, it doesn't really matter if they're indeterminate or determinate tomatoes out in the field. They don't have a long enough season to get extremely tall. And what happens is they will produce all their fruit by the time they get to be about 3 feet tall for the year. At that time, it's time to harvest. So we aren't concerned about growing 12-foot long tomato vines out in the field. And yeah, I could care less whether my tomatoes are determinate or indeterminate when they're field planted in northern Saskatchewan, Canada. And these tomatoes should produce somewhere in the range of 300 to 500 pounds of tomatoes by the end of the season. So we'll keep track and keep updating on the tomato harvest throughout the year. Thank you.